The Catholic Church continues to grapple with another round of sexual abuse allegations. Most notably, a grand jury report in Pennsylvania accused church leaders of hiding decades of abuse committed by hundreds of priests. A month after that news broke, we're now hearing from the head of the Diocese of Tucson. Bishop Edward Weisenberger issued a 6-page letter that offered an update on his diocese's own efforts to prevent abuse. He also sat down with Christopher Conover to discuss how parishes have responded to concerns so far.
I found that any time a pastor sort of dealt with it, and I call it touching the wound. There's an old saying, the good doctor has to be willing to touch the wound. I think people were deeply grateful for that. I would say this is such a moving target at the present time that sometimes people in our culture want us to rush out with immediate answers, and I understand that. It's the way our brains are wired in Western culture. But one of the great truths about the Catholic Church is we're probably more an aircraft carrier than a speedboat. And sometimes there's some real prudence in letting a little bit of the dust settle before you give the world your best answer.
Were there pastors, even in the diocese, that were not answering questions to their parishioners quickly enough or at all? We're not, as you said, touching the wound and just letting it go?
I think most have been doing a very good job, but I also think many, like me, were waiting to see what are the real issues here. And sometimes there were some people, I guess, that didn't even want to wait a week, and sometimes to see what the real issues are takes some time.
What is the Diocese of Tucson doing to prevent what happened in Pennsylvania?
The Diocese of Tucson experienced our own kind of Pennsylvania event many years ago, and it resulted in a bankruptcy for the Diocese of Tucson as they opened their files and worked with government officials, lawyers, all those things. We really did what has happened all across the nation, which is we implemented safe environment protocols. So we have rather intense safe environment protocols. People get fingerprinted. We do background checks on anyone that's a volunteer or an employee. We screen people very carefully. And that's actually why the numbers of allegations in the last 15 years in the Catholic world have dropped to a tiny trickle.
According to the diocese, since 2008, it has processed more than 38,000 clearance requests for those working or volunteering in parishes and schools. In that time, the diocese denied more than 700 requests. It later revoked 12 clearances and fired 10 employees over sexual misconduct allegations.
For the non-Catholic world looking in, Catholic Church has gotten a bad rap lately. What do you tell non-Catholics that say, oh, I would never go to a Catholic church, I would never send my child to a Catholic school because of all of these allegations?
I would say to non-Catholics, if you look at the statistics, there's no higher incidence at all of sexual acting out among priests than there is amongst any other identifiable group, any other ministerial group, any other group of men. I do sometimes feel that the world will be a much safer place when the world begins to look accurately at the phenomenal amount, the overwhelming amount of sexual abuse going on today in our world. And it's almost a collective yawn on the part of our public when we hear about 1 in 5 females today or 1 in 12 males today being sexually assaulted, not 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years ago, but today. And we've made such huge advances within the church. I think our culture will be much safer when others kind of follow our suit.
What are some of the things that the church can lead on to reduce that number worldwide, not just obviously within the church, as you said, but worldwide?
I've only been here 9 months, but in my previous dioceses, there's other groups that would sometimes publicly and sometimes quietly come to us and say, explain your protocols to us, show us how to do it. And there are groups that have used us as the example of how to do it right.
The Pope has talked about this, but is this an issue, obviously needs direction from the Pope, but is better handled at the diocese level, at the parish level than from Rome?
All of the above. One thing we forget is the word Catholic means universal, and the United States, we oftentimes discover the way our bishops deal with something is being watched very intently by bishops' conferences around the world because just of what the United States of America represents to the rest of the world. And so we're oftentimes on the cutting edge. And so for the United States bishops to be working with the Holy Father in the Vatican, and for the United States bishops to be working very closely with the men in the trenches, in the parishes, the pastors, all of that is essential to having a really accurate understanding of the situation.
Is there anything in this area that you look at Tucson and say, we're doing a good job, but we could do better?
I think our program is going very well. We're audited. I think every diocese in the nation now is audited. They send in an auditor team from out of state, and they put it out for bid, but they use companies. Like the first time they did it, it was all retired FBI agents who went out. And I was always a part of those audits in my previous 2 dioceses. And they would come in and they might visit parishes. They talk to diocesan employees. They talk to whoever they want to talk to, especially members of those review boards that review any kind of allegation. Tucson has always been in compliance. We just have a strong history here.
In his letter, the bishop says parishioners withholding donations over the latest scandals could cripple its ability to uphold the protocols it credits with keeping children safe.
The notion, I think there's a thought out there that maybe we can wound the bishop, wound the diocese, but it won't harm the local parishioners. It really isn't true because the nature of institutions today, we've had to take over on the diocesan level because of employment law, finances, insurance, formation of parish ministers. We are serving the people in the pew, and so if people do choose to respond that way to withhold donations, it's going to harm the people in the pews, and I cringe to think that would happen.
I definitely don't want that to happen, and I don't believe most Catholics want that to happen, but I do think most Catholics want to see the budget.
A lifelong Catholic, Renee Schaefer Horton works as a coordinator at the University of Arizona School of Journalism.
My earliest memory is, as a 4-year-old praying the rosary. That is my earliest memory.
Outside of work, she wrote an op-ed for the Arizona Daily Star in August, announcing she would stop donating and encourage others to do the same until the church makes some changes.
This is my church too, and it just upset me. And so I thought somebody has to say something, and the way that I knew to do it is that you can't keep feeding it. You can't keep giving money to something that is not working. And it's hard. It's really hard for me every Sunday.
Even more difficult was reading the grand jury report out of Pennsylvania and learning that a third of the bishops involved tried to stop its release. It came weeks after other bishops were accused of turning a blind eye to alleged abuse at the hands of Cardinal Theodore McCarrick, who resigned in July.
And that says to me that's just a systemic problem with clericalism. It's a closed old boy network, and that needs to stop.
Horton says bishops complicit in any cover-up should resign, and going forward, she wants to see greater involvement from the church's lay people, its devoted members outside of the clergy.
In the rooms where decisions are made about who becomes a priest, who goes to seminary, who becomes a bishop, those decisions are made by celibate males in a closed system, and that's part of the problem.
Horton is among a chorus of voices across the country calling for reforms.
I think the question of how the church will move forward depends a lot on those tangible reforms that lay Catholics are asking for from their leadership.
Daisy Vargas specializes in Catholicism in the Americas and teaches at the U of A College of Humanities.
Folks are eager to talk about this. People want to have a conversation. These sexual abuses were covered up by silence and by secrecy, and right now it's a painful time for the Catholic Church and for survivors and for their communities, but it's also a time for conversation. I teach a contemporary Catholic thought class here on campus, and the first day of class 4 weeks ago, the first thing a student says when he walks into class is, "Are we going to talk about this? Everything that's on the news, are we going to talk about it?" And I said, yes, we have to talk about it. So I think this is a moment, this is a pivotal moment for the Catholic Church.
Horton is hoping for signs of change in November when the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops meets.
you know, if they batten down the hatches and then just basically say we don't care what the laity think, that will be a real struggle for me. And I have a number of friends who've left, and this was like the last straw for them, and they're now looking to be Lutheran or going to be Episcopalian or something like that. And I have done some of that exploring throughout my life, but I always keep being drawn back to Catholicism. This is my church. I belong here as much as any priest or bishop does, and I can hold my own in a room full of priests and bishops in any discussion. Many Catholics can. We're not, you know, just pray, pay, and obey. We think and we learn and we study.
If you want to read Bishop Weisenberger's letter or the op-ed by Renee Schaefer Horton, we have links to both on azpm.org/Arizona360.